Mais ici, ça va pour les caméras? Oups. C'est un peu bizarre parce que... Nine, 8, 7, 6. Happy New Year! No, no. Yeah. Yeah. Chinese? No. Chinese New Year is already... So, good morning, bonjour. It is a great pleasure to welcome you all to the open conversation. This is a plenary talk on the power of teacher collaboration, hosted by the Multilingualism, Interculturality and Language Lab of Circle U. At the same time, the open conversation is part of the joint Mobili conference, which has been taking place from Wednesday until today at UCLouvain. This event, along with the joint conference, has provided an excellent opportunity for academics, professionals, and students to access, share, and discuss cutting-edge research and practices in our field. Before we get started with the open conversation, let me say a few words about the structure and the format of the event. So the open conversation format combines a short talk with an interaction between the plenary speaker and a panel of respondents, which in this case includes two PhD students, Antonina Kostic. I don't know if we can see Antonina online. Okay. Hi, Antonina.
Hi.
She's a PhD student from Belgrade. And Stanislav Katanek from UCLouvain. He's on site, as you can see. And then we have Karine Paris from Université de Paris Cité, academic chair at CU Mill and also language teacher. Then, after the contributions of this panel of respondents, we will be opening the floor for questions. So both on-site and online audiences will have the opportunity to ask questions, but there are two different options. For those on-site, you can use the YouTube channel if you're a bit shy, or you can just speak up and use the microphone to ask your question, okay? For those online, you have only one option. You should have come. Otherwise, there is only one option. Okay, and as you might have noticed, maybe not you, but the ones who are sitting behind all these machines, there is an online audience, so I wanted also to welcome everyone who is following us online from a distance. Colin Stars, who is co-organizing the event, and I are also deeply grateful to many people. So this is a very nice location here, a lot of work for the preparation, but I would like to mention Fanny Meunier, who has been giving us some support from the very beginning. Nathalie Coisman, who is in the back too. Erin Turner and Tabata Scoglietti, the students who are helping us with the whole setup. And Benoit Terbourg from Didaxo and the team, behind all the machines here. And many others that you cannot perhaps see but have been working and giving us some support at all locations or partner universities. I could say un grand merci à vous tous. Merci. And now I would like to introduce the plenary speaker. This is Marjan Asgari, who is a junior professor at the Free University of Bozen-Bolzano, Faculty of Education, Department of Linguistics. So she has taught German. This is our common interest, let's say, as a foreign language at various universities in German, Italy, and the US at Georgetown, right? And here, areas of expertise include academic accompaniment, management, and scientific analysis of communities of practice. And this is why she's here. So I had the pleasure to collaborate with her in the past in some EU projects. And I really was amazed about how she combined or she succeeded in translating insights from the research into meaningful practice. And it's a pleasure to have you here, and we are all looking really forward to your talk on the power of teacher collaboration, benefits and challenges of communities of practice for language teachers. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having me. Thank you so much, Ferran, Colleen, and Fanny. It has been such a great conference. Thanks for all the good participations and participants and conversations, and our two plenary speakers, Lourdes and Sonia. It has been really a pleasure to hear so many good input. I would like to start my presentation with a quote from Albert Einstein. "No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it." And this certainly applies not only to the theory of relativity, but also to many research questions that we might encounter. And we might never know which parts Mileva, Einstein's first wife, actually played in the development of the theory of relativity, but we can make sure through communities of practice and by working across silos that we're actually actively taking part in the creation of knowledge and the distribution of knowledge. And a quote for those who already heard me quoting Einstein, a new quote from Paul Ricoeur, a great philosopher and based his theory on Hegel's dialectics. A non-dialectical approach, a non-dialectical contradiction, that is a tragedy. So I think this also sums it up. Communities of practice offer us the opportunity to dedicate our heads, hearts, and hands to a collective interest and a shared vision. And studies have shown that communities of practice are particularly successful when they receive support from various institutions and can communicate their results to the outside world. And I would like to continue with a quote from an Austrian-German action research team. "We would like to encourage people not to keep their own experience to themselves, but to make their own thoughts and actions public." And according to these action researchers, high-quality professional activity requires also the willingness and ability of individual practitioners to make their own insights and practices available to their respective communities, and thus also to test their own experiences and knowledge. So what exactly are communities of practice? So they develop a shared identity around a collective interest. They aim to positively influence practice and are characterized by leveraging hierarchies or formal meetings. And a good strategy for building a strong community of practice, this is for you, Stephen, based on the needs of our language centers, our departments, based on our shared values, skills, expertise, resources, and experiences, can be by asking the following questions. What do we have in common? What is our shared vision? And what actions will our community of practice take to improve our practice? So I'm very much looking forward to also hearing your best practice examples throughout the day and to discuss this more. The concept of action research provides us with a set of validated tools and solid theoretical background for communities of practice. And action research, as you all might know, is a strong trend throughout the US, the UK, the European Union, and with its subcategory lesson study being particularly prevalent in Asia. And action research enables bottom-up processes and is productive for the development of one's own teaching. And as you can see, in the action research spiral designed by an ECML project, action research is structured by the interplay of research questions, tools, observations, recording, analysis, discussion, and reflection, and then a restart. And this is really important, that we do not stop here, but we actually start, and then we start again. So action research is actually characterized by its iterative nature. By repeatedly translating reflection into action and vice versa, knowledge and action repertoires can be expanded, differentiated, and improved over time. So change is usually a long-term process. That is okay. And during this process, we can adapt and modify our action concept again and again. And this is what makes communities of practice so exciting. In Clark and Clark 2024, I found this appealing metaphor. A community of practice is much like a thriving garden. And behind this metaphor lie various aspects such as innovation, structure, and creativity of communities of practice. But at the same time, however, the prototype of a garden that each of us has in mind is different and conditioned by cultural and individual imprints, as these three very different photographs of gardens exemplify. So different linguistic communities may conceive and conceptualize things differently, and as a result, we have different conceptual categories. So second language learning often entails the learning of new categorizations, quoting cognitive linguistics-inspired language pedagogy. And I think this is something that we should keep in mind when setting up our community of practice. Our partners may have different ideas of the community of practice that we're going to set up, maybe how often we should meet, how regulated our research should be, etc. So therefore, I would like to introduce you to some concept, different types of agency and leadership that might help you to deal with these differences effectively. Agency can range from, in the specific context of the community of practice, scientific support for the community of practice by providing customized recipes, to expert groups providing more strategic support. And it's also, of course, possible to do without scientific monitoring and developing the solutions within the community of practice. Same goes for leadership, and I'm curious to see and talk to you later about which kinds of agency and leadership you are going to implement or going to promote in your communities of practice. So different leadership styles also can have a significant impact on the perception and effectiveness of the community of practice. Autocratic leaders may need to adapt their management style to foster an environment of more openness, open dialogue, and collaboration. And similarly, maybe consensus-based leaders may need to introduce a degree of structure and purpose to ensure that the communities of practice stay focused on the topic and on the goal. And we also know this from our classrooms. I mean, we're also leading our classrooms with these different kinds of leadership styles. And I want to introduce 3 different new types of leadership that might be interesting for us. The first one, shared leadership, characterized by a dynamic and interactive influence process among the members. Then there's regenerative leadership with a strong inclusion of all team members and by including regenerative methods. And transformational leadership with its main goal to inspire and motivate team members towards a shared vision. Transformational leadership, I will not talk about shared leadership. I think it's pretty obvious what this means, but transformational leadership, I think that's very interesting. It refers to a vision-driven and supportive leadership style that inspires followers to exceed their self-interest for the good of the organization and for a shared purpose. So transformational leadership is characterized by 4 unique sets of behaviors, namely idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration. Oh, and I'm also happy to share the PowerPoint afterwards, so you can all have the slides afterwards. And then there's regenerative leadership. I think this is especially interesting. The use of the term regeneration has become increasingly common throughout diverse fields and describes processes that lead to the restoration or revitalization of the surrounding living organisms, ecosystems, or societal structures. So I think this is also very important for our departments. And regenerative leadership is marked by developing a sense of meaning, engaging in keen observation, deep listening, and generative conversations, which we already had through this conference. So I'm happy about this. And effective leadership bolsters openness to change, rather than just, for example, measuring the negative impacts that our departments might have or that our language centers have, through, for example, focusing on the environmental footprint that we're now doing at UniBZ. I'm sure many of your departments are also doing this. Regenerative business models also look at the positive changes their services can create, which would be called their handprint. I think that's a very interesting concept. The concept of handprint is based on the role of economic activity within ecological systems and its prosperity. So the handprint would be the footprint of the substituted product, service, or behavior, minus the footprint of the offered product or service. And our goal would be to reach a net positive impact, which means that an organization's handprint is bigger than its footprint. And an example, because it's very theoretical, could be the usage of ChatGPT, because we've been talking about this a lot during the last days, and I know that many of your best practices are also based on the usage of ChatGPT. Citing Richard Kern's position paper on Gen AI, published in the Modern Language Journal 2024, quote, "Large language models require extensive filtering by humans to override racism, sexism, homophobia of source texts. But these human filter generators are hired for very low wages, which raises ethical issues." End of quote. And I would like to address another problematic issue. The training phase of large language models like ChatGPT consumes enormous amounts of energy. Simple question to ChatGPT, for example, uses 10 times more energy than Google search. Well, before they merged. Let's see how it works now with DeepSeek, but that would generally be considered the footprint. And I think it's also important to keep in mind that we need to consider this when we implement Gen AI in our foreign language teaching. But on the other hand, I would like to emphasize the positive impact of language learning with Gen AI, for example, through timely feedback. And this makes language learning accessible to anyone with a phone and an internet connection, thus providing a very strong equalization of educational opportunities. And Lourdes Ortega's plenary talk yesterday showed us the possibilities, for example, for refugees to use this great app Hero without facing racism or othering, and they could just speak and get good answers. So I think this is something that we should keep in mind when we're talking about new ideas that we're bringing into our classrooms. And of course, digital transformation, it's everywhere. Just a quick graph from our action research project with German as a foreign language in the Department of Economics. We asked the students how much they're using AI-based tools like ChatGPT for writing text in their foreign languages. And in 2023, only 25% of them said that they are already using these tools, while in 2024, it was already 80%. And I'm sure that you're facing the same things, and many of your contributions this morning will deal with these digital transformations. I just quickly wanted to give you some food for thought, maybe also for follow-up discussions that we might have personally over a good cup of coffee. Who are we in a rapidly changing digital landscape? How can we encourage sustainability and regeneration in digitalized foreign language teaching, but also how can we encourage innovation in foreign language teaching? So I would like to introduce a regenerative business strategy that is particularly suited to assessing whether and which digitalization processes are actually part of the positive core of our organization, because we do not need all of them, but we should make sure that we find something that is actually at the positive core of our organization, and then how can we implement it and strategically upscale it. This would be appreciative inquiry. Cooper, Ryder, Whitney, and Stavros described appreciative inquiry as a form of organizational study that selectively seeks to locate, highlight, and illuminate the positive core of the organization. So appreciative inquiry provides not only a generative process of collective learning, but also a way to explore, discover, and appreciate those aspects of our organizations, of our departments or language centers. And it helps to discover when our organizations are most vibrant, effective, successful, and healthy, also an important factor, in relation to their whole systems of stakeholders and users. And appreciative inquiry stands through a 5D model, which includes the phases of definition, discovery, dream, design, and destiny. And I would be happy to discuss this more in detail later, maybe while also focusing on your specific departments and questions. And as mentioned by several researchers throughout this great conference, digitalization provides us, as foreign language departments or teachers, with many benefits, but also with challenges and risks. So I would like to not only include these strategies from project management for the positive core, but also for mitigating risks, because we might encounter them. And we can do this via a 4-step process of risk mitigation. First step, identify the risk. Second step, to assess the risk. Then to evaluate the risk and to monitor. I would like to give you some examples. So the first step would be to identify the risk, and an example could be our community of practice will create an innovative digital teaching unit, but not all students might like it, and not all students might want to take part in this new digital teaching unit that we created. For example, disagreement of students to use ChatGPT in foreign language classes. The second step would be to assess the risk, so how probable is the occurrence and how severe would be the impact. And for us, for example, as you could see, it was 25% of the students saying that they were using ChatGPT already. So the risk was highly probable because many of them in 2003 were actually still really against it. So the third step would be to evaluate the risk versus the gain. So our UniBZ team was certain that the students' reservations about ChatGPT would quickly change. And indeed, only 1 year later, already 80% of them said that they used it. And we also considered the gain, because this is really important. And for us, it would be that it's really important to teach the students how to skillfully and responsibly use ChatGPT, which clearly outweighed the risk in our perspective. And I would like to quote Steve Thorne in his commentary on Gen AI in a Modern Language Journal 2024. A seemingly intractable concern regarding Gen AI is academic dishonesty. Additionally, students may become dependent on these systems, relying on pre-generated answers and texts. To mitigate this issue, educators need to develop pedagogical approaches that encourage students to use Gen AI to support learning rather than as a substitute for their own L2 communicative abilities. End of quote. And quoting González Roret from the same journal issue, helping learners in developing critical digital literacy must be a core mission of every educator. So for us, the gain clearly outweighed the risk that students might have their observations. So the fourth step would be the control monitor. We find solutions in the steps beforehand to prevent the risk scenario from happening. So in our case, giving the students meta-explanations about why we would include ChatGPT in our foreign language class was really helpful to give them actually the reasons why we would do this. And for risk mitigation, I would like to apply a system-based perspective, having a look at the neuralgic points where all the threats are coming together and the nodes where the threats are coming together, not just focusing on one specific problem, which might prevent our community of practice from succeeding, but actually having a look at where it comes together and what is actually leading to which, keeping the systematic approach in mind. I would like to quickly introduce you to 4 communities of practice that I'm leading at the UniBZ right now, just maybe also so that we can discuss this later on. One is working together with the Language Center with teachers of German as a foreign language at the University of Bozen-Bolzano, and we're specifically focusing on the use of ChatGPT and corrective feedback. And then there was one action researcher team, it's international with Austria and Italy, and we focused in 2023 on refugee classes in Austria. Then I led a really cool, interesting community of practice together with the primary school, the German-speaking primary school in Italy, and they had 80% of the children with German as a second language. So they actually came to us and asked us for help. And then I led this third mission project together with them, and it was really a great community. And I am going to lead the community of practice together with 4 kindergartens, the directional school board of the autonomous province of South Tyrol, and several researchers during the next month we're going to start. Here are just 2 slides with results. So during our primary school teacher community of practice, we implemented some new teaching methods, e-learn scene with Ferran. We created these learning scenarios, and then we implemented and tried them in the school. And we had really positive results coming from the students who really liked this new type of teaching that they didn't experience before. So all the constructs, coaching, activation, motivation, and structuring were really evaluated positively. So it was great for the teachers to see that through this third mission project, they actually received really good feedback from their students. And beforehand, they always felt like, we don't really know what they think about it. They're like really struggling with German as a second language. So they really didn't feel like their teacher perspective was fully fulfilled. But through this questionnaire for them, it also became more clear that they actually did a good job. So that was very helpful. Something else that we came across, more accidentally actually, was translanguaging practices in this class, because we did audio recordings in all the groups while they were writing their texts. And we saw in the end that one group actually did translanguage. They were using Urdu and Albanian, which was also their heritage languages. And in this group, they actually wrote syntactic complex texts according to the Prof analysis following Grieshaber. And they also wrote more contently complex text. So it was interesting to have these results. And I think here it's also good to see that action research or third mission can take us to like some explorative studies and some working hypotheses that then further on we can turn into very solid research designs. The feedback of our community of practice was really positive. The teachers said that instead of feeling this deficit orientation, they really felt empowered because they were now working together and not just individually. The students, the learners, said that they really liked what we implemented during the action research projects. The headmaster said that over the past year, the entire school team has grown closer together thanks to the community of practice. That was really nice. And then at the language centers, the teachers said that using new technologies feels also better in a community of practice, because during the first year, the students were really critical and they're writing the observation, like the giving the feedback in the end. That really matters, of course. So for her, it was helpful to have also the scientific support and like being able to say, I did this in a good way. Which takes me to my last slide, last but not least, celebrating success. I think this is also really important to set SMART goals, SMART, the T being also for timely, so that we know maybe at the end of semester or end of the school year, we can actually have a look at our community of practice and whether we reached our goals. And I think also here it's important to implement some of the strategies from IT and project management that we do not need to reach 100%. No one does. It's also already fine to celebrate success when we have reached 50% or 70% of our research, of our intended goals. So successful communities of practice value their members and their contributions. These celebrations also give great opportunities to share the achievement with the outside world and to share the success stories, maybe with the parents, maybe with other practitioners, or maybe with other departments. And this, of course, gives great motivation and engagement to the participants and to others. Grazie, danke, thank you. Closing with a nice picture from my happy place. Here's a bibliography. I'm happy to share the PowerPoint presentation with you, of course, maybe through your community. And don't hesitate to get in touch and contact me to get more information, also for the research papers that I've been talking about. And here's my website at UniBZ. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was really enriching. I really kept in mind the last slide, celebrating success, and that brought me to something that I forgot to mention. The open conversation is not only part of the Mobily conference, but also the kickoff of this Circle U or CU Meal and CU Meal project, communities of practice for language teachers. And because I see many local coordinators here that will be helping to set this up at the different partner universities across the Alliance, I also wanted to thank you for having accepted to be part of this project that will be getting started right after the conference. I also forgot to mention that Marjan had accepted also to train the local coordinators and to accompany the whole project throughout the next term, and that will be having also a final conference in at King's College in London, the 2nd and the 3rd of June. So thank you so much for the local organization of the conference. I know I'm experiencing this whole work myself these days, so I know this is going to be huge, but I hope we will be celebrating success too. So, and that leads me to the next part of this open conversation. I know your instinct is now to ask some questions, but we have to be calm and to wait until after the contributions of the panel of respondents. So I would like to have Antonina Kostic on screen, if it's possible, because she will be making the first contribution, and then we'll proceed in the order we are sitting here at the table. Okay, Antonina? Can you hear us?
And, good morning from Belgrade. Yeah. Thank you for including me in this beautiful project. And thank you, Ms. Asgari, for the beautiful presentation. For me, I had some key points that were very valuable for me because I don't have a lot of experience with communities of practice. But what I gained from your presentations, is the dedication you're showing to a collective interest and to a shared vision we all have as language instructors, and how important it is to make our thoughts and actions public. Something that I think is also valuable for us if we're thinking about creating a community of practice are the leadership styles. You mentioned the 3 different leadership styles, and to find our own way of functioning and making the best out of a community like that. And also, I think it is very important to think about the handprint, so the way we make an impact with our projects, and also to think in this changing digital landscape, what is our place in it, because there are a lot of changes happening right now, and as you mentioned, it is very important to think about the sustainability also and some innovations we can make in this process. I also believe it is very important to think about the possible risks, as you said, so to identify them and to see how we can approach them, and maybe together as a team and through collaboration to find a way to solve them. But also, as you both mentioned, after assessing all the risks, it is very important to think about celebrating success and really thinking about the big impact we made as a community of practice. As you already said, we can see that through communities of practice there are many benefits for both teachers, for language students, and also the institution as a whole. So we can see that teachers feel empowered, that students have been enjoying more the process of learning a language, and that also shows an improvement generally for the whole institution. And we can all benefit from a perspective like that, and really find a way to collaborate and to make the process the best we can through this process of collaborating together. For me, it was interesting to see the different projects you were able to organize or will organize in the future, and it has to do with different types of institutions such as schools or kindergartens which can collaborate in different ways. So that's something for me to think about in the future and to see how can I use that in my own institution. I come from the University of Belgrade, and I'm teaching at the Department for Modern Greek Language. So in the future, for one conference, I'm doing a research which has to do with AI, as you already mentioned, that is a big topic right now, and the way that AI can help improve the quality of the written text of students. But right now, as you maybe know, the political situation in Serbia is very difficult, and we have students blocking the universities, so we cannot actually have classes. So my question maybe is, what do you think? Is there a way for a community of practice to maybe help in this way to transform a research like that and find a different path of collaborating with the students in a difficult situation such as this one we are right now?
Thank you so much, Antonina. That was really interesting insight from Belgrade. I also really liked our discussions before. And yeah, I think it's very, very challenging, of course. And you have my admiration for the protests of the students that are going on for such a long time now. I think it will be great to work internationally because I think the topics, and I can really recommend Antonina's research, it's been interesting to discuss it with her. And I'm sure that there will be many other people interested in this topic in the international field that would collaborate together, because many of you also talked about Gen AI and writing, improvement of written texts. And of course, there's like a fine line, I think, between universalism, what is it? Universalismus, and relativism. It's English, relativism. This is like strange in English, but I think it's interesting to see that, like, on the one hand, we want to make our research more generalized, but on the other hand, of course, there are differences in the tools that we're using, like ChatGPT. According to different languages, we get different results, and of course, there are differences between the languages. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. It would be interesting to hear from you actually later, like how you did the collaboration together with teams that might not be working with the Greek language, but maybe also finding someone who works with Greek as a foreign language, who actually will be able to give some input on that.
So thank you so much, Antonina. We're moving on to the next respondent, Stanislav Katanek, PhD student at UCLouvain.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marjan, for your insightful presentation. And as both a language teacher and a researcher, I could relate to many aspects, and I think many of them can be really useful. At first, I think it is crucial that you emphasize the importance of collaboration between researchers and teachers. As you pointed out, collaboration between researchers and teachers is a dynamic process. And during your presentation, I was thinking, is it a reciprocal relationship? And furthermore, should it be a mutual process, or it depends on the research question and other contexts? And can we really separate these two roles during our work as a teacher and researcher? This is just the first point I find interesting and to think of, and also maybe to discuss this with you. The second point regards the idea which you discussed, that this kind of collaboration at best functions in a power-neutral discourse, as Jürgen Habermas would say, and in which it has the potential to bridge the gap between theory and practice. And in my experience, I think this aspect highlights a neglected dimension of our work, namely emotions and personal experiences that we bring into the classroom, or that we cannot switch off during our research. And I noticed myself that every time when we worked on a certain project in such a power-neutral environment, it was possible to be more open, and this leads to more creativity because we knew we can receive also honest feedback. The same experience I also had with students, and you also said that the students enjoyed new learning scenarios, and I think this is very important nowadays when we are faced with a rapidly changing world and new AI tools such as DeepSeek. For instance, collaboration can reduce anxiety in this sense about the future because everyone is involved, and we can also share the same same experience together. At the same time, I also know that it can be very difficult to overcome certain challenges in action research, such as limited generalizability and confirmation bias. Another challenge might be that in academic context, action research is considered less valuable than theoretical work, and therefore I would like to ask, how can collaboration between researchers and teachers be structured to ensure that action research is recognized as a legitimate and effective research method?
Thank you, Stan. Yeah, I would like to pick on that, up on that comment about the reciprocal nature of the collaboration. I think that is really important because the research field is defined by the action researchers or the team I'm working together with. I'm not bringing the theory into the field, but they're actually telling me what they need from me. So I'm providing them with tools and with methods, but the research questions we develop together because it should actually be relating to the problems that they're facing in the field. And as a university researcher, of course, I also want to somehow use the data, for example, for explorative descriptive field studies, and by including also meta-reflections or qualitative interviews with the participants of the action research project, which I then analyze with an inductive qualitative way. So I think action research is really great for mixed method designs, especially when you have a sequential mixed method design, starting with quantitative data and then going in with an in-depth analysis of qualitative data, maybe through interviews, because usually these people are also happy to give very long and detailed interviews. And you can also observe classroom interactions and do like field descriptions. So I think there are these possibilities. Then it's really a good comment about the confirmation bias. I remember that yesterday we also talked about the observer paradox, to which I would like to answer with Niklas Luhmann's concept of the observed observer. And I think this is a really interesting concept that we can use, or the second order observation, so that we also reflect what are we bringing into the research and into the data that we're analyzing. We're not completely outside of it. Of course, we also cannot analyze language without language, so we're always facing this problem. And so maybe why not, for example, facing one of the cameras on us as observers and later analyze how we actually moved around in the field, why we did the recording. I think that could be really interesting to see. And then Habermas was certainly right about power-neutral spaces being really important for this critical thinking, even though I agree more with Adorno. But as a regenerative leader of communities of practice, of course, I think it's really important to create these spaces. But maybe I would rather create something like a heterotopia, not utopia, but heterotopia. So like a safe space within society, but maybe set a little bit on the side of society. And a safe space where these discourse rules are leveraged. I think this is really important because the power dynamics, they do oftentimes exist. You said like you would work together with colleagues, and oftentimes, for example, in one of the research projects I did in the community of practice with the primary school, There was the teachers, 5 or 6 teachers. Then there was the headmistress, but the headmistress was also a student teacher. She had been at the school for 10 years, but she was then writing her master thesis with me, so I was her official supervisor, which of course created all different kinds of power dynamics. I really liked Jesus's talk about humor. He's not here anymore. 2 days ago, and how this can also like bring us down a little bit and disseminate this, like lower these barriers between our action research team and us as the experts, or like scientific experts. And I really think it's so important to tell people again and again that they're the experts in the field. I bring in scientific knowledge, but they actually have the expertise in the field. So I really want to learn from them too, because I'm nothing without them, basically. So, yeah. Thanks. Good.
Thank you. Yeah. So that's really an interesting idea, and I think it was one of the purposes of this conference to make practice meet research and research meet practice. And in some way, we could say, yeah, teachers can benefit from using research methods to solve questions, to inquire about things happening in their classrooms. So, and this is wonderful. Yeah, moving on to our last respondent, Karine Paris, my colleague, academic chair at UCLouvain. The floor is yours for the contribution.
Well, thank you very much. I'll start by giving you a little bit of context on where I'm speaking from, and then I'll bounce back on some of the key elements that I find are really interesting in the communities of practice before asking my question to Marjan. I'll start with a story in the making. A year ago, the platform UCLouvain, focusing on multilingualism, interculturality, and language lab, met here in Louvain-la-Neuve for a 3-day intensive work session. We brainstormed ideas and we devised a series of projects. We had all just been appointed, we didn't know each other, and we had never worked together before. So it was just 9 universities appointing 9 academic chairs. So in a way, what we did was to build our own community of practice. And we were very keen on making the Alliance a project that would benefit the greatest number of people. But how do you do that? How do you get people involved? It was just 11 people in a room trying to dream big, but also be realistic about what they could accomplish. And so one very important aspect for us was to get language teachers involved, because as I've heard many times for the past 2 days, they're the driving force of language learning in most of our institutions. And so among other projects, we decided on building a language teachers network, now called Nexus. On paper, that sounded really good, but how do you do it in meaningful ways? Somewhere along the way came the idea of doing it through communities of practice. I don't know who had the idea. It wasn't me. I wasn't really familiar with the communities of practice. Maybe Ferran, Colleen, Fanny, all 3 together. Once again, it sounded good, but what was it and how do you do it? So after listening to Marjan, for me, here are the interesting aspects of communities of practice that really convinced me that it's the right way to go, and that I will share with my colleagues when I'm back home as the local coordinator for the community of practice. All right, so 3 key aspects. So building a common identity and a shared vision, the impact on our practices, and the fact that they are bottom-up initiatives, something that hasn't been focused on much so far in our discussion. All right, so building a common identity and a shared vision, especially in environments where teaching can often be quite solitary, matters, right? Together, we are stronger. However, here we have a double challenge. How do we need to do it locally in our home institutions, but we also need to do it across 9 universities that have very different educational background or cultural backgrounds. So that's one of the challenges we're going to face. Second point, improving our practices matters. Because while it's great to experiment on our own in our classrooms, some challenges cannot be answered on our own. And I think we've seen it throughout the conference, with presentations, and I'm going to repeat what everyone is saying, I'm sorry, but presentations on the challenges that AI raises with regard to language teaching and learning. And I'm a firm believer in collective intelligence. On our own, in our classroom, we can experiment, but collective intelligence is going to help us find the right answers. The last point, which is more a modality than an outcome or a goal, is the fact that communities of practice are bottom-up initiatives. I guess it's one of my favorite aspects because it's probably the key to success. No one tells you you must do it. The system is flexible, the way I understand it, right? Teachers decide to do it on their own terms. They choose what is relevant to their work, their interest, collectively, all that, right? Their interest, their institution, their students, and they collaborate to achieve the goals that they have set for themselves. We have seen that communities of practice are based on collaborating, sharing, peer reviewing, setting collective goals, etc. So the collective aspect is of primary importance. However, communities of practice must also adapt to the ecosystem we work in. And for the past 2 days, we have focused a lot on the classroom as an ecosystem, but we also work in language departments, in schools, in universities that display their own ecosystems. And that can be very different between countries, but also within countries. So my question for you, Marjan, because I have a question eventually, how do you set up a community of practice in an environment where collective work is not the norm, where teachers tend to work on their own individually or separately, and the classroom is their realm? We very well know that higher education tends to foster such environments, either because competition and productivity tend to be core values, or lately because teachers have become, in a way, overworked, and it's quite difficult to engage them. So that's my question.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you also for the insights about the development. That's really good to know. It's really interesting to getting to know that. I think it really helps. I think our school settings or our environments or university settings might not even be that different from the IT settings that I took all the regenerative business strategies from, because I think also maybe they were like sitting just by themselves with Red Bull and peanuts in front of the computer for like very long hours and work by themselves. So I think these strategies have been developed for a reason. And we saw with the DeepSeek now that actually this collaboration is such an integral point or part of getting somewhere. So I think we should really use these strategies. These strategies are there. They have been developed. We're just not using them in our field because we're like working within our silo and we're not looking at what others have already developed. So I think these things like appreciative inquiry, when we do it right in the start, while starting our community of practice, it helps us to find like the positive core and maybe also the risks that we might face. And maybe it will also give us like a strong and good feedback from the community of practice that we want to build when we actually go through these methods of appreciative inquiry. Or we did the wonder question together in the workshop in December. I think it also really helps to go through these steps of systemic coaching and actually adapt them. It might feel strange in the beginning. It did feel strange for me, but it really helps. They're really there for a reason. Sometimes I think we need to take the time to ask these questions and really reflect on them and discuss them and then find together. So I think it really helps not to just form the community of practice and start right away, but actually think about what we want to do by following these questions, for example, through the appreciative inquiry. And then what you said, of course, it's really important, this bottom-up process. I think that's really a huge part of communities of practice or action research. And I think it's really important to have this collaboration between scientific knowledge and also practitioners, and to include everyone in the communities of practice, because we also had these interesting discussions, like maybe some people might feel excluded, maybe some will be marginalized. And it's our responsibility as regenerative leaders that we do something to include them within our community or in our community of practice. We are not just focusing on something that we are doing and that we want to push through, but we also want to include all the opinions of everyone. So I think there are like great online tools also that we can use to like make that more open. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We are keeping to time, and I would say we have not really. Okay, Colin is telling me I was so optimistic. Sorry, but I would suggest maybe we move on to the questions. We open the floor for questions. Perhaps one question here and one from the online audience. Did you get any questions?
So far we have no questions from the online audience, or people in the room. Don't be shy. If you have any questions, feel free to send them in the chat, and otherwise we'll open it up to the room first.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Marjan, for these amazing presentations, and I'm glad you picked up on the mobile spirit of teacher research and what in the US we call professional learning communities. I'll be happy to include this in my upcoming discussion session at TESOL. I will be leading a discussion on professional learning communities. And it'll be interesting to see what ERC call community of practice. At the end, they are communities, which is what we're trying to establish now. I've been listening to your questions and the challenges of setting up professional learning communities. And this was part of my truncated plenary that I never got to. So I'll take advantage of this to just expand on this. So first of all, it's what's difficult about professional learning communities is what you were mentioning. The fact that, first of all, there are teachers who are consider their classroom are their silos. And in my plenary, I talked about teacher research versus action research. Teacher research being the wider idea, action research being a form of teacher research. And the reason I go into this kind of semantic distinction is because action research somehow assumes there's something to be changed. And that could make a teacher, and already language teachers are under a lot of pressure, and as we all know, and there's no need to reiterate that, and it's a sensitive type of profile, and the fact that something needs to be changed could be a source of concern and undermine their identity, and they could get really protective about this. That's why also introducing teacher research versus action research makes more sense as a process to deepen self-awareness and being very careful about how teacher research is introduced. And I understand your concern about validity, reliability. I've done my share of research, and that's a concern. But I guess to begin with, it'll to start as a process of gaining awareness of the classroom ecosystems. Now, one of the challenges that I've found setting up professional learning communities, and that I will talk about, is make sure that everybody participates. And one of the techniques that I will be talking about, it's called habitus engagement. Now, habitus engagement comes from French. Sorry, I didn't prepare for this, so I'm kind of a little bit. I don't have my slides, but it's the idea that every one of us has ingrained disposition, personalities, habits, the way we are, the way we speak, the way I present, the way I teach, the teaching persona that I am. And for professional learning communities to be successful, everybody needs to participate. I mean, it is a shared leadership to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think
everybody needs to participate. And one way for everybody to participate is to bring their habitus to the fore.
Yeah, and I think action research also is like not only looking at something that we can improve, but also like the positive core. For example, we've been working a lot with collegial observation, and I think that's a great way to bring everybody in. When we do collegial observation, they don't feel like so timid because it's not me as a researcher coming on, but it's actually like their colleagues.
You might want to look at teacher research that's being carried out by the British Council in South America and in Nepal to empower teachers from underprivileged communities.
Sonia, we need a question.
Okay. The question is, sorry, that's me going in the flow of time and not being able, but I'm really fascinated by this and I would love to follow up. The question is about the challenges of setting it up. I mean, I want to see what was the difficulties and how you got all the teachers to all the teachers involved in this, and the size of your PLC, I mean, of your community of practice, COP, sorry. Thank you.
Okay. I'm a very bad time manager, but perhaps you want to react.
Yeah, at the one community of practice, for example, in the primary school, we were 5 or 6 teachers. Like, not all of them participated in all the meetings. We were actually meeting quite regularly, like maybe like once a month, and then once a month also online, once a month on site. It was me during my postdoc time, and it was also another professor in the fields of German as a foreign language. And then it was also 2 master students who did the same thing in a different school. So it was also interesting to see how they implemented it in their bilingual school, where we were working at a school with German as a second language children, and they were actually like implementing it in the bilingual primary school. So they could also give cross feedback to the colleagues from the other primary school. And we worked a lot actually with collegial observation, and we got really positive feedback on that because they said it really helped them. We gave them an observation tool specifically for linguistic input quality because that's something they wanted to focus on, because they said they were so deficit-oriented on the second language speaking children that they did not focus anymore on what they could actually bring into the class and the positive things that they could do. So we decided to have this linguistic input observation scheme so they could observe each other and actually like give good feedback also to each other and show to their colleagues that they actually gave really good input. And sometimes they could improve something and they noticed that maybe the scaffolding was not great or maybe some aspects of the linguistic input quality could be improved. But in general, the feedback was really good and that left them with a very positive vibe. So that was like the tools, the problems they faced before and then how they solved that and how we worked through this within the 2-year process.
Thank you so much. I have been informed the coffee is getting colder, so I would like to say some closing words. Stay seated for a moment. A few important things. So to recap, communities of practice is about people, practice, and purpose. So common purpose. Research can help for the setup and for conducting or for setting up implementing these communities of practices is important. It remains a challenge how different universities, in our case, will be cooperating or co-working within this ecosystem. So locally, it's perhaps easier than across the alliance. We'll find a way. I hope you will give us some support to have some tricks and tips to do so. And now, we had a hidden respondent. It was interesting to have this meta comment on the respondents. Thank you also. I just wanted to say thank you to those that followed us online. Even if we didn't get any questions, it is important now for us in this ecosystem from Circle U to attract your attention to the fact that there is a kind of evaluation survey. Maybe we can display the QR code. We'll be happy to have your feedback on this. As you have seen, this was not a classical plenary talk. It was combination of respondents and plenary talk, a bit more interactive. I hope you enjoyed it. And I would like to finish with the transition to the next session. We have a show and tell session. And perhaps Colleen can say a few words about the structure and how we'll proceed with that. Okay. You have a micro? Yeah.
Yes, I have a microphone here. Okay, so first of all, as Ferran just said, if you can take a few moments, people in the room and people online, just to answer the short survey. It's a survey that we've been sent by the people who are in charge of organizing the open conversations in Circle U. So we'd be really grateful if you could take a few minutes just to fill in that survey. Then for the people here in the room, just a few words about how we're going to proceed for the rest of the day. So as you know, after the coffee break, the well-deserved coffee break, we're going to proceed with the show and tell session. So Marjan and the panel have set the scene by telling us all about communities of practice and their importance. And so what we're going to do then afterwards is to launch the communities of practice by getting you to discover new innovative pedagogies that you can then take home with you and try out in your classrooms when you return to your universities. So you'll see on the wall over here, we have divided you up into different groups, just near where the table is for the refreshments afterwards. So we have 5 different groups, group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there will be 5 stands showing 5 good practices that you can then try out, as we said, afterwards in your home university. So each stand, group 1 will go to best practice 1 first, group 2 to best practice 2, etc., etc. And then you'll have a certain amount of time at each of those to listen to the presenters explain what they do in their classrooms, to ask questions, to look at lesson plans, etc. We'll tell you when you have to move around, so you'll circulate around the different practices and get to experience all of them. And then at the end, you'll see at the desk over there, we have a sign-up sheet. So a sign-up sheet like this. So in the end, you can then sign up with your name, your email address, the name of your university, and which practice you would like to try out when you go home to your home university. We then will give this information to the local coordinators at each of the partner universities in Circle U, and then they will get in touch with you afterwards to launch the community of practice at your home university. So I hope this is clear for everybody. If not, I'll be around, Ferran will be around, so don't hesitate to ask any questions over coffee before we get started. Okay, thank you very much.
And thank you to Marjan for the plenary talk again. Yeah?
Thank you.
Mas